Hello again. It's me, Brian Farrell. I'm the Senior IT Manager at BetterCloud. And as always, I'm joined by my fearless co-host, Justine. Justine, something is different. Your hair, maybe?
Yeah, just more than a few things are different compared to Justine. But I'm Dennis. I'm the IT specialist at BetterCloud, and we're going to be talking about a couple different things today.
Well, welcome, Dennis. Thank you for joining me. Unfortunately, Justine couldn't make it today, but Dennis has been understudying for her role for weeks now. He's got all the lines down. So I'm happy to have you with us. We're going to be talking about MLM. No, it's not multi-level marketing, although actually, could I take a quick second to tell you about this amazing opportunity for you to get in at the ground floor and you get to be your own boss. And if you
Brian, I don't think anybody wants to hear about your pyramid scheme. So what we are here to talk about is mid-lifecycle management. Brian and Justine have covered how to automate employee onboarding when someone starts at a company and offboarding when someone leaves. But what about when they change roles or teams within the company?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want somebody to either have all of the access that they kind of always did from start to finish.
You didn't say the magic word.
So if somebody comes in and I don't know, they're working on the support team and they have access to a lot of production data, and maybe they go on and they become an implementation specialist, or they go into our marketing team, they probably still shouldn't have access to all of that customer data. And vice versa, when somebody changes roles or they're promoted or they join a new team, you want them to have access to all this new stuff on day one of their new role, just in the same way that you would want them to have access to everything on day one if they were starting as a new employee.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to really, by automating this work, it's going to make for a really seamless experience for the person that is changing roles or getting promoted, their manager, and of course, us on the IT side.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people moving within organizations are like the redheaded stepchild of the family. Like they're like forgotten about. We care about like getting all the ducks in line for onboarding and revoking access when people leave. But it really does add a lot of work potentially and a lot of overhead to track all this stuff when people are moving within the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are some strategies that we kind of went over when deciding how we wanted to build this. Brian, what are some of the strategies that we decided on going with?
Yeah, well, so when we first started, we took a look and we were kind of debating like, how do we know what access somebody's had and how do we get rid of it, or how do we add to that? And so we kind of came down to, there were two different camps about it. The first one was, we just kind of nuke everything from orbit. We start over from scratch. And so we would basically run through like a full deprovisioning workflow that takes away kind of all the accounts, all of the group access, reset everybody to kind of ground level one. And then, or there's another more targeted approach where we try to just revoke group access or add group access to the very specific things that we know that they already had. We ended up settling on the second option because it was a little bit more targeted, a little bit more surgical. There's things that people do acquire over the time at a company, ad hoc group access and things like that, that they may not actually want to get rid of, and you may not want them to have that revoked. And so when you kind of nuke and pave everything, it can cause more problems than that. And with something like BetterCloud, you have more control over what groups and things you remove people from. And so we tried to explore that route more. And so we're actually going to talk about that and show you a couple of examples today of how we started to implement this. Alrighty, so here you can see an example of a departmental onboarding workflow. So we mentioned it in previous SaaSOps I can't say the name of the show. This is a problem. In previous SaaSOps show episodes, we've talked about onboarding for employees, and we've talked about the drawn out onion metaphor that I've made before, where everybody gets the inner part, and then you start to build on layers and layers of access. So you end up having a situation where multiple onboarding workflows are running when somebody comes on board, something for all full-time employees, something for maybe in a whole org, something for department, something for a team, something location specific. And so this is an example of the department specific one that we have. Marketing, basically we have a condition on org unit changes, that org unit is marketing. We add people to a bunch of Google groups here. We add them to calendars, we add them to Slack channels and Slack groups, and we invite them to Asana, which is one of the 27 project management tools that we use at BetterCloud. And the marketing team uses it. So we send them that invite as well. So I'm going to take a look at the workflow we built to undo all of this access. So let's say somebody starts on our marketing team and they decide they're going to be a software engineer. Actually, that's what they've always wanted. Marketing was just for fun. They're moving over. And so what happens when they transition out of that department? So we built this workflow so that we had to pick a trigger that had a corresponding trigger or condition that would tell us that was the opposite of what we were doing in the first place. So the first trigger that we had was when somebody's moved into an org unit, and that org unit is marketing, it triggers this workflow. So this workflow here is when anybody's org unit changes and their org unit was marketing. So it's perfect. It's got a one-to-one. We've got one for adding and one for removing. And then we go through and we do exactly what we did in the previous workflow. We add people, or we remove people from specific groups. We remove people from specific channels, and we remove people from Asana. And that puts them into a state where then whatever new team that they're on, or whatever new departmental workflow that needs to be run can run and give them the access that they need. It's really just as simple as that. Obviously, more complex departments and more complex teams, you will have to create more complex offboarding workflows for those teams as well. And you also want to make sure that whatever actions you had taken, there is a corresponding way to undo that. So for instance, we add a user to a Google Calendar in this onboarding workflow, but there isn't actually a corresponding action to remove them from a calendar. There's only the option to, I think, remove like all secondary calendars or something like that. So it's not perfect because each product that you're operating in, whether it's Google or Microsoft or Okta or anything, they all have limitations based on their APIs. So you really do want to do some research into for every add action, is there a remove action? And we had a few different triggers that we also evaluated for this. Dennis, can you tell me a little bit about some of the triggers that we looked at and why we went with them versus not going with other ones?
Yeah, so we thought about going with the create user trigger, but the limitation of that is that sometimes accounts are staged ahead of time. So it's not always accurately. So BetterCloud's not always going to it's not going to accurately react to when the user is created. We decided that going with a group or a OU was a more sustainable solution. So that way, when that change actually does occur, it does actively trigger the offboarding workflow for that department.
Yeah, because let's say like you create a user who's starting, in a few weeks, and you want to get them some very basic level of access, or you're just like staging the stuff. You may not have all of the information in their profile fields that you would be used to trigger some of these workflows. Like you might have a condition that says like if a user is created and their department equals marketing, then run them through this marketing workflow. But what if you create the user and the department is blank? Well, when you go back in and add that marketing marketing profile attribute to their profile, that's not going to be enough to trigger the workflow to run because it also relies on the user being created at the same time.
Right, exactly. So by making these changes, we're able to more accurately automate, when someone is to move into a new role, someone gets hired or someone is leaving.
Yeah, perfect. Just as easy as that. So simple.
Very simple.
Well, thank you for watching. I mean, it is pretty much as simple as that. We'll let you know as we go through and finalize this out how it all turns out, but it's going well so far. If you haven't already, and you're interested in topics like this or any sort of SaaS or IT professional thing, you should come check out and join the SaaSOps community. There's a link below in the description, or possibly it's in a card, a YouTube title card floating around here. We haven't become YouTube masters yet, so I don't know if that's going to be a thing, but otherwise it'll be in the description below. Otherwise it's SaaSOps.community.
Yeah, find me at Dennis-BC on the Slack community. And if you are interested in getting certified in BetterCloud, we have a certification. You can find all information about that at bettercloud.com/certification, which we also put down here somewhere, or up here, or down there.
It could be anywhere we want it to be, really.
Yeah.
This is the internet. It's our...
Yeah, anything is possible.
Anything is possible. It's just a series of tubes. Well, like I said, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Dennis, for coming on to talk to us too.
Happy to be here.
Can't wait to have you back again in the future. We just embrace the awkwardness after a while. We're still awkward, but we just are fine with that now.
Yeah, that's part of the game.